This week on Community Watch, I have a conversation with executive editor of the Rome News-Tribune, Jon Bailey, former Georgia Highlands student, and you really want to hear some of his stories of his editorship at the newspaper. Great conversation. Community Watch starts now. Welcome to Community Watch, and I am beyond thrilled to have with me today the executive editor of the Rome News-Tribune, Jon Bailey.
I'm glad to be here.
Welcome. Executive editor. Now we'll talk about that in a minute.
There's so many things you can say about that.
But one of the many reasons I'm happy to get you on the show is to talk a little bit about your experience at Georgia Highlands. Because you were a student there.
I was, absolutely. I was your student there at one point.
Well, we didn't need to go there, but okay. We've been doing kind of a group of shows about folks who attended Georgia Highlands or Floyd College.
Sure.
And
I can't remember which it was when I was there.
It had to have been Floyd College.
I think it was Floyd, and then, I think that sounds right.
It may have changed while you were there.
It may have. I could check my diploma.
And actually it was Floyd Junior College before.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but that was before your time.
Way before.
Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about your Floyd College experience. I know that you took creative writing because that's what I was teaching, and you seemed, just based on what you've been telling me, you seemed pretty engaged in some of the other courses as well. It was a good experience for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, it was perfect because I moved back down here. I had been working in IT and hated it. And then, because you know Sally, and so my wife Sally was like, "Hey, why don't you come to Rome?" I was working. I was working on the Eastern Market part of Washington D.C., and that was cool, but the job. And so I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm coming back. I'll go do something different. And that's kind of where I got back in the Highlands. Was that something different? Well, I'll just take some classes. I had a little bit of cash, set aside, and so I could do that. Not a ton of cash, but
Well, we don't really require a ton of cash.
No, it was perfect. It was right at my price point. It was very convenient. I could actually sometimes ride my bike to get there, and honestly, great experience. Just a great experience. I mean, other than the creative writing, I remember having Knaus for biology and enjoying that, just enjoying the class. Several other things. I got an A in math in a statistics class. I got a 99 and got recommended for some kind of something award or something. Yeah, which was the first time in my entire educational career that math was a good point for me. So statistics, there you go.
Do you remember who you had for statistics?
Oh, if I saw her, I could say that's who I had, but no, I don't remember her name off the top.
Okay.
But she was obviously an amazing statistics teacher. Right. She could get.
Well, I'm glad you had a positive experience.
Oh, yeah.
But during that time, I know you weren't then saying, I want to be an editor for...
No, not at all. Yeah. No, honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I did some work with the 6 Mile Post. Christy Kemper was there.
Yes.
With that, and actually that was the first time I started writing opinion pieces. And I think I did that for the 6 Mile Post and just some other things, like some photography and stuff like that. And that sort of led me was sort of the jumping off point to later.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where I was like, hey, this is something I like to do. I like to tell people's stories. You know, so there you go.
And I know you completed your bachelor's at Shorter.
Yes.
So in your time there, did newspaper work?
I did. I was actually, like, while I was going to Shorter, I was the evening cops reporter for the Rome News-Tribune.
So it all began.
So it all began.
Yeah.
The editor came there to speak to a class, and I was like, hey, I'll do something with that. By that time, I needed a job. And so
it worked out perfectly.
So it worked out great.
Yeah.
And so then I started doing that, and it was basically like a 3 to, I think, 11 shift. And like whatever crimes happening, fire, you know, shooting, what have you, you know, you go to it, take photos, talk to people, and, you know, come back to the newspaper.
Well,
file a story.
I mean, I'm thinking, when you first mentioned it, I was thinking, you know, you just write stories based on the report.
Right, and that was part of it.
But you actually went out to...
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, absolutely. Yeah, there was, here you go. Here's a story. So, go to one thing, it was a murder, unfortunately. But the amusing part of that is that I go there and I'm talking to people, and I remember it was over off of East 14th Street. And I'm talking to people and just, you know, what did you see? You know, did you know this guy? And it was a Cedartown guy. He was a young guy. He had been shot during a drug deal later. We found out. And so I start talking to this one guy, and I'm like, you know, what did you see? And he's describing all the details. The car speeds off and all this stuff. He goes, but you know, don't say who I am. Like, don't identify me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know, fair. Because, you know, there's concern there, right?
Sure.
So fair. And so I just put, you know, residents or residents who asked not to be named, said that, you know, here is some of the things that they reported happened. Uh-huh. So I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm saying this is what people are saying. And I come in the next morning. Actually, it was a little bit later in the day because I went to school, and then I came in for a little bit. And the reporter on duty was like, hey, we got some arrests in that. And I'm like, oh, nice. Who is it? And he pulls up the mug shots. And I'm like, well, I said some words. You know, I was like, well, about said just now. But, you know, I was like, oh, hey, did you read the story? He's like, yeah. I was like, that's the residents. That's the, you know, who asked not to be named right there. And so, yeah, that was just part of the job.
Wow. Was it difficult for you seeing the crime scenes? I mean,
it could be.
I would think.
Yeah.
There
is stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's absolutely, you know, there's stress on obviously the people who are being involved, massive amount of stress, the police, us, you know, going out to in that particular instance. And, you know, one of the visual memories that I have of being, you know, a new reporter and going out to these things is, you know, that's where the guy died. And so, you know, I wasn't like taking pictures of him on the ground because we don't do that.
Right.
But I remember him dying, you know, him bleeding out and dying because he got shot in the chest with a shotgun. Because they're just working on him. And, you know, you roll up, you don't know what's going on, and you just, you know, come up and be like, what's that? Oh, you know, and there it is. So, yeah, it can be. And, and you know, I'd say journalism in general can be pretty stressful, especially if you cover, oh, my God, these days, politics, exceptionally stressful because there's so many blurred lines of what is news, what is a news agency, and then you have a lot of political or PACs, you know, political action committees that basically make a website and portray themselves as a news agency, and they report on various things. So and that's, you know, that spans the bandwidth of political. Usually on the extremes, but political, you know. So, yeah. It's fun.
Well, obviously the crime beat did not scare you away.
No. Actually, they
work.
threw me into courts, and I love covering court cases.
Yeah.
Not necessarily even like, crime court case, but just courts in general. The arguments that take place, especially like the federal courts, civil sometimes. Sometimes it's beyond me. I'll admit it.
Yeah.
But I love watching the arguments form. As evidence is presented, or as they build a case, and then some of the people who, some of the attorneys who build these cases, especially the really good ones, are artists. The way they form an argument and the way they put it together, and you can start to see those patterns, and that's very entertaining to me.
Ah. So that was the next stage in your career?
Yeah, so night cops, and they threw me into a federal drug trafficking trial on my first day of courts. Yeah, so
a big one.
Yeah. It was a local one. Involved a local businessman who's since passed, and a whole drug ring that was going on here. And we could talk about 2 hours on that one in and of itself. It was so wild.
But clearly, an education for you.
Oh, absolutely.
As your first one.
Trial by fire, I would say. Yeah.
So you were sold on courts after that experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I still I covered a hearing this morning. That's not the pain, not the stress, but just it's taking a step back, because you have to take a step back. The kind of artistry of how things work. A judge who is really good at maintaining their courtroom and dealing with the legal arguments. Attorneys who come in, even how they portray themselves and how they act towards the jury, and things like that. It's become to that point where it's almost like clinical, where I'm watching like a detective who, has obviously been trained to turn towards the jury and answer the questions. Like they ask him, "What did you see?" And he turns towards the jury. Well, let me tell you. This is what happened. You know what I mean? And just little things like that are, pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty entertaining.
Yeah. So when did you make it to an editor level?
That's a great question. It would have been probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I think I became the web editor / I would cover court stuff as well. So I was primarily like, what is the Rome News-Tribune and the other, associated newspapers, like what's our web strategy? And so that would have probably been 2012 maybe. And so then I was over that, like social media strategy, web strategy, but also because, again, I enjoy doing it.
You didn't want to let it go.
No, of course not. No, so and then I would go cover courts or watch things go through the appellate court or to the state Supreme Court, or or even at one point to the U.S. Supreme Court with the Foster case. And so, and so then I kept doing that, and then, battlefield promotion after battlefield promotion, they just keep moving you up. They're like, hey, you're sticking around. How about that?
Well, you have survived a lot of changes in newspaper life.
Yeah, it's been a very rapidly changing business environment.
Yeah.
From like 2006 to now. Yeah, it's been a very rapidly changing business environment. Even as editor, going into the pandemic, which was, a very interesting time for, to try to run a business whose job is to get people information, during a time when shutdowns are happening and conspiracies are blooming, and, and a pandemic is happening on top of everything else. Right. And so, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. But you've maneuvered through it all.
You got to adjust. Got to adapt. Yeah.
But that's not everybody does that well.
No, you got to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to adapt.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on our first break. When we come back, I want to hear more about this executive level editorship that you are now in.
Sure.
We will be back with more from Jon Bailey, and don't want you to go away, so stay where you are right now.
Access to me means I get to explore and define myself.
Access? That allows me to follow my passion.
For me, it means I get to do what I've always dreamed of doing, helping people.
Access to me means I'm the first one in my family to come to college. Sé el primero.
Welcome back to Community Watch. I'm having a conversation with Jon Bailey, the executive editor of the Rome News-Tribune, and alumnus of Georgia Highlands / Floyd College. So we're very proud of you. Executive editor, what is that?
It's the top level editor at the Rome News-Tribune, and then I also manage loosely the Calhoun Times, the Polk County Standard Journal, Tusa Walker News. I think that's all of them.
My goodness.
And so, but loosely. So my management style is get somebody good into that place, and then if they have a question, let them call me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say loosely managed.
No, I like that.
So like Blake and Polk, not Blake and Calhoun and Jeremy and Polk and Don, like they just call me if they have a problem.
Right.
And otherwise, that's really it.
Well, you downplay it a little bit, but it's an executive job.
Oh no, it is, and I have to go do things, and I have to supposed to be at places and show my face and do all that kind of stuff, and that's just part of it. And honestly, not that bad once you get used to it. But at first, that was the most terrifying part of the job to me.
The public appearances?
Yeah. You're just having to go and let's go talk to people and let's go shake hands and let's go, what have you. Or talk to when the politicians come in during political season and want to talk to you.
Right.
You just sit down and have to talk to. And honestly, after you get used to that, it's not that bad.
Because you do a tremendous amount of actual writing still. It's not.
Oh yeah.
It didn't remove you from that.
No, and I would not like it if it did.
Yeah.
That's why I took the job in the first place, because I love writing.
And so I don't know if this is the nature of journalism in general, but you have to do a lot of spontaneous, the way it will be in the paper writing. I mean, as opposed to revision and reconsideration. Don't you have to write something quickly and?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, so here's one of the fun parts of that is when we deal with someone who's not been in that field, in journalism field. Right. They're often very surprised at how quickly something gets turned over, right? And quickly and hopefully not haphazardly, but quickly, concisely, and then you move on to the next thing, and then you did it, and then you move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that it's been great for, because it's this constant deadline. So you just go at it and you go, okay, what's the issue, what's the story, and half the time I already have most of it in my head by the time I get back and actually sit down at the computer. And if you see my notes, if you could read them, because they look so bad, I will have drawn and be lead. Here's my lead. Here's the crux of the story. This is what I think the most important point is. And so then you just sit down and you get it together, and then you hopefully get a couple more people to look at it to go, what were you even thinking in this paragraph? And actually, our features editor is my favorite person for that, because he doesn't have. He's a good writer. It's Svera Avila. He's a really good writer, but he's also doesn't have the knowledge base, because I'm not writing a story for an attorney, or for a cop, or for I'm writing for the other guys, right. And so he doesn't have that knowledge base. So he's really good at pointing out, why are you talking about this part? Because I found a particular portion of a lawsuit particularly interesting, right? Which nobody else may. You know what I mean? And so, that's good. And having the other people to just sit there and be able to bounce ideas off of is probably the best, honestly.
Well, the fact that so many newspapers are now, I guess, owned by a corporate entity.
Oh,
of some
absolutely.
kind. Do you struggle to maintain the local uniqueness of the paper, or is that still a feature of Rome News that has stayed with it? I mean,
Well,
it's become a...
The good thing about that is my boss has the same management style as I do. And so I don't get a lot of, because the Rome News-Tribune is owned by a newspaper group, Times-Journal-Link out of Marietta. And unless I have a question, I don't ever hear from them, which is a good thing, right? I mean, and they seem to be happy with the job I've done so far. And again, with less resources, and I'm not trying to, poor mouth it, but less resources, less people, less time,
right.
And so I've been lucky in that. Like, my boss is like, you need help, holler at me. You need something, give me a call. Otherwise, go for it, and, trust me to do that.
So far, so good.
So far, so good,
Well, in your unique vantage point, I'm guessing you see a kind of big picture of Rome in the area that maybe most of us don't see. So, what are some of the big stories you anticipate coming along and say in the near future?
Yeah.
Or something that's already a big story.
Oh, absolutely.
That's going to.
Well, and that's what I was going to
continue.
go with. I think, the water pollution lawsuits concerning PFAS, forever chemicals, things like that have wrapped up. And so really the next phase will be Rome building this reverse osmosis, which is a water treatment facility. And that's not Floyd County, that's just Rome, so City of Rome water customers. And where this goes from here, because we're one of the first places that got a settlement from DuPont, 3M, Daikin, Shaw, Mohawk, all these places. And so we're seeing those types of lawsuits ripple effect all over the country, honestly. We just got finished with being sued by DuPont to block publication of their settlement. Which is always fun, get sued by DuPont, right? And so I think that's one of the things, and I don't think this is the end of that. And I expect those environmental concerns and others to continue. I think one of the biggest stories we're going to continue to see is economic and industrial growth, because Northwest Georgia is kind of a target right now. Not necessarily in a bad way, it can be, as we just finished talking about, you know what I mean? But with SK On and the Hyundai battery plant and these things being located in this area, historically, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but Korean companies, larger ones, have a tendency to work in like almost a family-like atmosphere. And so they bring other companies they want to work with to where they go. And so it won't be surprising to me to see more of that expansion continue. And that's big as is, because you got to have housing, you have to have all the other things that go along with that as well. And how do those companies deal with the environmental concerns, and can we have good growth, or growth that's good for us economically as well as not bad for us environmentally? And so that's one of my big concerns.
Right. All right, so that's an example of a story or series of stories that have started that you anticipate will.
Oh, I expect those to continue going.
And actually, I guess that impacts every aspect of Rome life.
It will.
Education and housing and everything else.
All of the everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you seeing any changes? I mean, because one thing that I always heard, and I don't know how true it is that the population of the area just was not growing tremendously.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true.
Yeah. Are you seeing any changes there, or do you have a sense of that?
I mean, I definitely have a sense that it's almost a ripple effect at this point that I don't think has really hit Floyd County full on. Mm-hmm. We've definitely seen Cartersville, Bartow, the I-75 corridor, and as those companies, I mean, look at Calhoun now. You know what I mean? As those companies and as those things ripple on back, I think we're going to see more of that. I feel like our population is growing because, you think about it before. There was a growing population, but a lot of people left, and myself included. You know what I mean? But a lot of people leave and they go away, and the kids are like, I'd rather be here or rather be here. I feel like Rome is trying to do quality of life better now. And so, we'll see. But I fully expect as those industrial opportunities continue to expand, that you're going to see more of it. And I know we quoted some folks on the Northwest Georgia Regional Commission, which kind of look at this in depth overall, and they're like, get ready, it's coming. So,
but you do see changes that downtown and the trail system and aspects that would interest people.
Absolutely. I mean, think about how many people. So pandemic hit, Martha Berry Trail opens, right? It's just a little 3-mile trail. How many people were on that trail?
Yeah.
And it's a nice little area. Yeah. It's like a little agrarian, almost you're out in the middle of nowhere, but you're not. Right. You're still get right there and then you can go back to work. Okay. Or, Ridge Ferry Park and just some of these other trail-related things, which are now looking towards getting like interconnected, which I'm excited about.
Yeah. That'd be great. So, unless I have missed it, the paper has never done like reviews, like restaurant reviews.
Oh yeah.
Or
if they haven't done a summit
reviews
there, right? Are you going to do restaurant reviews for us?
I don't know.
Well, here's the problem with reviews.
Yeah.
Right. They're a double-edged sword, right? So that's always been the problem with reviews, and I know one reason why. Like I would have been like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Because if you really want to get some hate mail, that's the best way to do it.
Right.
And I have plenty. Thanks for asking. Just from politics, from people who don't even read my newspaper and never heard of it before. We get hate mail from all over the place. It's
really?
So good. Yeah, it's primarily our congressperson. Well, the great thing is we get both sides.
Right.
So we either somehow I had the power to bring her in, right, and she's my bestie, or it runs the gamut. Yeah. It's just like oh, okay, well that's interesting. It's like, oh, well you guys were the one that supported her. I'm like, that's absolutely not the truth. And I bet if you asked her, she would say something different.
I'm sure.
I think one time, it was the New York Times of Northwest Georgia. That's what we were. There was like a video where she's like, in the New York Times of Northwest Georgia down there, the Rome News-Tribune, da-da-da. I'm like, so I'm watching my kids at a track meet, and then all of a sudden I started getting like phone call. I'm like, I'm not talking to you people, like I'm off. And then texts, and then video links. I was like, oh my God. So yeah, life continues to be interesting.
We are totally out of time. Thank you so much for being here.
I enjoyed it.
And I hope you'll come back.
I absolutely will.
Because we got to hear more stories.
I got plenty.
Yeah. And thank you for being with us on Community Watch this week. We will see you next time. Bye now.